Well, one, thanks for being here. On your table, you'll notice there's some notes. The ones that are folded in half, everybody needs one of those. So take that. That'll be for you to have tonight. You're going to need a pen because you will participate. You are going to have to write something down. You will have to talk to the people at your table. So I want to spend some time tonight, and I want us to talk a little bit about identity, a little bit about self, a little bit about values, a little bit about our why, a little bit about who we are, what we're doing, and why that matters. But I think in order to do that, we have to start at a different place. We've got to go back to the beginning. We've got to backtrack a little bit so that we can figure out where we came from, what we did, how we can build on something, and how we're going to land where we are now. So the reality is I think being a human is really hard. Amen. I think yes, amen to you as well. I think being a loving, serving, kind-hearted, entrepreneurial spirit, go-getter, driving human is really, really, really hard. I think on top of that, we attempt to be that by trying to identify who we are and then what we do and then why we do that. Trying to live into a perception and simultaneously live into a reality by not trying to get distracted by the things that people think and simultaneously want to make sure everyone loves what we're doing. Trying not to care what anybody else wants, but simultaneously doing what everybody else wants because that's the thing that gets us the most approval. And so we get in this cycle, and so we wake up in the morning and we're like, okay, today I'm going to do me, I'm going to work it out, I'm not going to worry about anybody else. I know here's what I'm going to do, and here's how I'm going to do it, and here's why I'm going to do it, and here's what I'm going to charge, and here's the art I'm going to create, and here's the business I'm going to have, and the employee I'm going to be. And then about 10:30, no one has responded to our post we put up that morning, so we delete it. So we say, I'm going to wait. It must be Monday. People are actually at work. They're not really worried about me yet, so I'm going to pause on that. And so we go for the rest of the day. About 2:30, we hit a space, and we're like, this is not the day that I expected it to be, and I haven't done anything productive. I haven't answered any of my emails, and so I'm going to shut it down early, try to do a post at 5:30, catch those people who are at work late, and then catch that evening crowd post-dinner. I'll go back and make an edit on my hashtag so that it catches back up in the evening. I get that second round. Maybe check out and see if I can hit the Explore tab and pick up a few new followers today. So I think that's literal for how we do social media, but I think it's metaphorical for how a lot of us pursue our lives. I think we wake up every day and we have this assumption of who we're going to be, what we're going to do, how that's going to work, and so we arbitrarily choose. I think yesterday people like this, so I'm going to try to be that. I think yesterday somebody like this, so I want to attempt to be this. I think in this role that I play, people like me to be this, so I'm going to act this way. At work, I have to be a little more hard-nosed than I am at home, but I want to be a little softer towards my wife than I am with my children. I want to be even more caring my children, but I'm tired, and at 7:30 I want to go to sleep, and they won't go to sleep, and so I'm really frustrated. And then we realize everything we're choosing is based off of the roles that we play. Everything we're choosing is based off of who somebody else wants us to be, or even the expectation of who we think we're supposed to be, as opposed to saying, no, this is who I am as a singular individual, and I want to be this person in all the roles that I play. So we're going to kind of dig in to that a little bit. I think for a lot of us, there's this overwhelming feeling at times. And let me give this will be the one disclaimer I'm going to give tonight. Well, I say that. I'm going to try to be this one disclaimer. I don't want you to think that you have problems because I tell you to, that I tell you that you do. I don't want you to think that I'm trying to be a Debbie Downer because I'm trying to make you sad. I don't want to pitch a version of my life that I'm going to share with you later because I want to be some sad sob story. I want to give a really clear context and really clear parameters for where I came from and how I landed here and why this is important to me. But I think in order to do that, that requires all of us here to kind of take a step back and do that same thing for ourselves. I think we've got to be able to take a step back and look at it and go, okay, where did I come from and who am I and why is that important and why does that matter? And so because of that, I just want to give the one sweeping disclaimer that says none of this is an attempt to be melodramatic or to pull some emotional draw out of you, or to make you feel like I'm a good person or a bad person or my life was terrible and now it's better. That's not the attempt. The attempt is I want to paint a clear picture about who I am to see if there's any moments of resonance that you have to go, that actually strikes a chord with me because I'm similar in said way, A, B, C, or D, and how that goes together. So, are you ever tired? Are you ever beat down? You ever feel worn out? Ever feel like you're just keeping up appearances? Ever feel like you do the opposite of those same things? Ever want to live into being a great introvert, and that's the badge of honor that you carry? Are you the person that likes to be busy? Are you the person that says, I can do all things for all people? I never say no because that's the mark that I carry. I say yes to everything because everybody values it and appreciates it. I do what I do and I charge what I charge, and I have the craft that I have, whether as an employee, as an entrepreneur in the nonprofit world, as an artist, as a maker, all based on the fact that at some point I arbitrarily chose that I was going to do this, and I tell people this, and I guess I've picked up on what people like about it or about me. And because of that, then that's the thing that I'm going to try to sell every day and at least make enough money to pay the majority of my bills. I think there's an element for all of us in that. It's reality. I can have a great product, a good business plan, cool widgets, and a great app. And I might have a great marketing scheme and it takes off in the beginning. And then all of a sudden somebody meets me and I shake their hand and they get to know me, and all of a sudden this element of self that gets involved in brand as it pertains, especially as an entrepreneur and even in the context of any company. And then all of a sudden my business isn't doing what I thought it was supposed to be doing because I realize I've interjected something into my business that was not what it was in the beginning. And unfortunately for a lot of us, I think that thing we interject is us. And not because I think we shouldn't, but if you have a shitty business, it's typically because you're potentially parts of you're a shitty person. I'm not saying you're a shitty person, but I'm saying you can't have a sustainable business if you don't have a sustainable life. And so I want us to start at a place where we can say, okay, I want to create some boundaries and foundation for sustainability in who I am, especially if you're an entrepreneur or you're a creative or a maker of any kind. Because if that's not the case, then everything is going to be built on somebody else's perception. It's never going to be built on communicating what it is that you actually want. So I'm going to go back a little bit. I was born in Liberal, Kansas. I lived there for about 2 weeks. Then I moved to Dallas. I guess technically I didn't move to Dallas. I got moved to Dallas. It was me and my mom. My dad all lived together for about 2 years. My parents got divorced about when I was 2 years old. For the rest of my life, I spent living with my mom or my grandparents. I never grew up living with my dad at all. I went to 13 schools before I graduated high school. My mom has been married and divorced 5 different times. So we moved a lot, not because of jobs or army, just because my mom liked to get married. So because of that, I realized really early on in life that the key to success for me was never meeting a stranger. To be the new kid at the new school every week, or every year, sometimes every semester. If I could be faster than you, better than you, smarter than you, nicer than you, more charismatic than you, if I could find a way to communicate more eloquently what I wanted to say than you, then somehow you would approve of me and say that I was valuable. And so I learned that the best way for me to survive was to be the new kid who never met a stranger and who invited everyone over for a sleepover on the second day of school. Now I didn't realize, fast forward till like 7th grade, I didn't realize in 7th grade when I tried to play Little League Baseball and I didn't get picked to be on the Yankees, one, because I was shorter and chubbier and not that athletic, but I would like to think that it was more because of the fact that I didn't live in the same town that everybody else lived in. And it clicked for me for the first time that you guys are on the same team because your dad has been coaching your team since you were 5. We're now 12, and this is my first attempt to play any sort of organized sports, and I can't be on your team because I don't belong here. And so it began for me to kind of create this dissonance, this space where I thought, okay, if I can't belong, if there's something that's keeping me from saying that I can identify with that or I get to be in that space, then I'm just going to find a way to close that gap. And so that meant that I would be charismatic. That meant that I would never meet a stranger. I could sell you your own shoes. I could talk to anybody about anything. And if I could do that, then you couldn't tell me I didn't belong because I would make sure there was a place for me to be there. What happened then is I began to create this world where I was in the center of everything. That if whatever you needed, I could do for you. Whatever you needed, I could do for you. What happened tell my grandma I'm going to go stay the night at Brad's house tonight. Great. Be home tomorrow. Be home Saturday at 9 a.m. Wonderful. When I left at 6 p.m. on Friday and got home at 8:45 a.m. on Saturday, what happened in that window? Wheels off. No rails at all. But I was home at 8:45 with my clothes washed, ready to go to my grandma to mow the yard and go to Dillard's. Actually, at that time, I was probably going to Mervyn's to buy some Union Bay jeans. But that's neither here nor there. 14 Husky, they were purple. Don't worry about it. Because I knew that what I needed to do that night was to make my friends happy. And I knew what I needed to do to make my grandma happy was to be home at 8:45. So you begin to get this picture. You can see how this cycle began to happen. So I graduated from high school. I ended up going to junior college for 2 years. Then I transferred to Texas A&M. I went to junior college for 2 years. We don't have time for this story, but I applied to the wrong school. Therefore, I got accepted to the wrong school. And so when I got my acceptance letter, I was like, that's not really where I want to go. My bad. So anyway, went to junior college for 2 years, transferred to Texas A&M. Same song, different verse. Same thing, pursuing the same thing, wanting the same thing, trying to make myself happy and make sure everybody loved me. I left college. I was in full-time ministry for about 8 years. After that, then my wife and I started our own business as wedding photographers. We did that for about 8 years, and then started the company that I have now about 2 years ago. Now, the reason I tell you that is because I want you to take everything that I told you about who I was early on growing up, elementary school, junior high, high school, fast forward, and then anything that you know about the church world, just imagine that same person, but in full-time ministry for 8 years. So I was the Jesus that everybody loved, but I was completely full of shit. So again, I paint this picture, it's not because I'm woe is me and I'm a terrible person. I'm painting this because I need you to see there were elements in my life that began to build to lead to who I was as an individual. Yet there was something still fundamentally that was different, that needed to change about the way I was able to perceive and see the rest of the world and how I was going to make decisions. Because as an I stood in the center with no foundation for value, identity, or who I was, and everything revolved around me, everything came crashing down. So I started to ask myself, what if my life wasn't about pleasing someone else? What if my life wasn't about creating something or developing something or being a really nice guy? What if my life wasn't about making sure everybody else was happy, that I could live in the perception that people wanted me to be? What if my life wasn't about making sure that whatever somebody else thought was the thing that I was going to complete? So fast forward to the year that my wife and I were going to get married, or my wife and I got married. I thought, you know what, I'm going to be a really good husband, and what good husbands do is they go to counseling before you get married. That way I can figure out who I am and love my wife better. So I did what every good husband did and went to counseling. About the second time in, sitting down, and my counselor says, so tell me, why are you marrying your wife? And guttural response, no hesitation. I said, because I want to prove to my mom I'm not like her husbands, and I want to prove to my dad that I'm not like him. And then I literally took the breath out of my body. And I realized the reason I just said that I want to marry my wife, and I didn't even talk about my wife. And so for me, it was this really big wake-up call to go, maybe what I'm doing and living and pursuing in hopes to get rid of the perception or to get rid of what people might think and to prove to them it's something else, maybe that's not what our life has to be about. Maybe that's not how I have to live my days. Maybe that's not how I have to pursue the things that I want. Again, it's not based on what I think someone thinks of me, but who I actually am. So I had this moment. What if my life was about making an impact? And that, what if my life was about creating change someplace else? What if my life was about serving people in a way that didn't have anything to do with me being the center? What if my life, I don't know how many Star Wars fans there are. I'm going to admit I'm going to use a Star Wars analogy, but I've never actually seen it. So judge me if you will. I'm up here, you're there, okay? So let me go with it. What if our life was, to use Star Wars, what if our life was not to attempt to be Luke Skywalker? What if our life is not an attempt to be the hero? What if our life is really an attempt to be more like Yoda? What if our life is we were made to be the guy in the back pocket of the hero, making sure that they had everything they need to hit a home run every single time? See, I think I spent the majority of my life, I say the majority, I guess it was, I spent the first 20, we'll call it 5, 8 years of my life attempting to be the hero, to be the center. And then there was a moment where I said, if my life is about making an impact and it's not about me, then I'm going to need to look at my life and go, what if it's about having values that I believe in that are going to be worth fighting for and to create a foundation of things that I want to stand on? What if it's not about the pursuit of me, but it's the pursuit of something outside of who I am in hopes to benefit, help, and serve somebody else? And so really what I want for us tonight is I want us to give ourselves the freedom to do that. I want us to give ourselves the freedom to pursue that, to take a really quick analysis of where we are, who we are, why that matters. I want us to take that and invert it, thump it upside down, let it all fall out, land on some other place that we're going to build, identify what fears and insecurities live and resonate underneath that, and then have this clear picture that shows if I know who I am, that will then transcend and lead into everything that I do. See, if we don't identify who we are first, what you do doesn't matter. Number one question. Hey, how are you? I'm great. How are you? I'm awesome. What's the next thing that comes out of your mouth? So, what do you do? What do I do? You just skipped 2/3 of who I am as a human being and you just went straight to what I do. And why? Why do we ask that question? Hey, I'm Rocky. Nice to meet you. How are you? Great. Well, so what do you do? Oh, I do this. And you tell me. So what do you do? Oh, I do business management consulting. Immediately, what happens? I take an account for that, decide if I know anything about that, go, nope, I don't know that much about that. I don't really care that much about that. Therefore, I don't really care that much about you. And you probably have a lame job anyway. So you're lame. Anyway, nice to meet you. And we walk off. And you can laugh, but you do that with every person you meet, whether you want to or not. You make a snap judgment about who they are based on what they told you they did and whether or not it was valuable to you in some form or fashion. I think what happens is we missed everything. Like, what if we said, hey, I'm Rocky. Nice to meet you. Hey, I'm Sarah. Nice to meet you. Hey, so tell me about yourself. Who are you? First of all, people would do this. So maybe it's working. But how would you answer that question? If you expected someone to say, hey, what do you do? And instead they said, hey, who are you? Do we know what to say? Do we know how to answer? Do we live in this like proverbial world where we're used to telling you what we do and we don't mind that, but if I tell you who we are, that's my personal life. No, I'm not going to tell you that. You told everybody where you were last weekend on Instagram, so I think it's fine. I think there has to be a space where we're able to wrestle with this convoluted is the only way that I can think to describe it. We've mixed up who we are for what we do and what we do for who we are. And then we carry it around like a badge and want to go, what do you do? Well, I help people. If someone asks me, what do you do? Oh, I help people rebuild their identity. And I've just decided to answer the question differently just because I'm tired of answering it enough that it gets the same response as, well, tell me what you really value about your life. People typically will walk away and don't want to talk to you after that. So when people say, oh, nice to meet you, what do you do? I say, oh, I help people rebuild their identity. And they either assume, you're weird and my identity's fine, don't rebuild anything. Or they go, you're right, I am jacked up. Can you rebuild me? And then I'm like, yes, for $500, you and I can get together and we can, but it's like kind of like a marketing ploy too, but you get the gist. We're all on the same page. We see how all these things are going together. So here's what I want. I want us to be able to build a really clear picture of who we are, a foundation for who we are, a foundation that we're going to build things on, and a filter we're going to run things through. So what if we could start every day? What if we could start every day with a clear picture of who we were as human beings? What if we understood what it is that we value most, why we did what we did, and that those values were the motivations behind our actions, our thoughts, our feelings, and our emotions? I think if we could land there, it would bring a ton of clarity to how we were going to choose to live the rest of our life. So, here's how this is going to work. You have some notes in front of you. If you'll take your little bifold, one side just says Staff Retreat Co., and the other side has some information, and it looks like a little funnel. I want you to start on the page that looks like a funnel. So here's what I want you to identify. I want you to identify where those 8 lines are, and if you have more, you can fill it in. I want you to write down every role that you play. I want you to identify every role that you play on a daily basis. So to give you some examples, friend in a relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend, sister, brother, husband, wife, father, mother, cat lover, friend, photographer, artist, maker, creative, entrepreneur, business owner. Ready, go. Then once you have your list of roles, I want you to, next to that role, I want you to write down what word would you use to define yourself in that role. That makes sense? So as an example, okay, I'm gonna write down husband. In husband, I'm gonna write down lover. Because I wanna try to define the role as a husband, I am a lover. Or love, or I don't know, whatever word suits for you. As a friend, consistent. And write down what defines you, not what you hope people see you as. That's a clear distinction. All right, keep writing if you're writing. So I think the truth is most of us have minimum 8, if not 8+ roles that we wrote down. On top of those 8 roles, we have 8 ways, theoretically, potentially 8 different ways we've defined each of those roles. Now, make sure I need you to hear what I'm saying, not what I'm not saying, all right? There's nothing wrong with having this many roles to play and defining these roles in this way. There's nothing wrong with that. But if we use our roles as the basis for our identity, you've now just defined 8 different ways in which you are a human being, 8 different things in which you do, 8 different values in which you have, and 8 different people that you need to be at different points in time, potentially all in 24 hours. So again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the roles you play or how you define them. I'm saying if we use the roles that we play as the basis and the formula to create our identity, we wonder why there's a discrepancy in our branding. We wonder why there's a discrepancy in who we are. We wonder why there's a discrepancy in decision making. We wonder why on Tuesday that seemed like a great idea, and on Thursday we're wondering why we would even assume that we would choose to do that. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a bunch of roles. I don't think there's anything wrong with defining those roles in multiple ways. But if you'll look at your little chart here, I think if we start to align those roles and how we define those, and in that same bucket we put fears, lies, hopes, dreams, doubts, insecurities, obstacles, and we start to align all of those with our roles, changing who we are. This person needs this of me, this person needs this of me, this person hates this part of me, so I'm not going to show them that, but I'm going to be this person because they actually like that part. And this is the part that at work people seem to like, but I can't be too honest because I don't want to come across as a bitch. Sorry, I was a little kid here, I can't cuss too much. But here I can be really loving because that's okay, because people expect that here, but they don't. You get my gist. What happens is we create this funnel and we go, okay, well, here's the 8 things I need to be. Here's the 8 ways I define them. Here's the fear and insecurity I carry inside of that. Here's the obstacles and hopes and dreams and desires I have built in that too. And then somehow I'm going to squeeze all of that through my funnel. And at the bottom, I'm going to call that my identity. That's a lot of things to squeeze through a tiny funnel to land at something, and then every day wake up and to be the same vulnerable, intimate, authentic individual in every role that you play and in every environment. We wonder why there's a discrepancy in our branding. We wonder why social media seems so hard. We wonder why we can't get our pricing right, why we seem to never get all of the right clients. We wonder why our friend group seems to be a little off. We wonder why we can't find discipline and we can't figure out what we want to do and how we want to do it. We can't figure out where we want to go and who we want to be. It's because we take everything that we think exists and we're supposed to be and we squeeze it in a funnel at the very bottom. We hope it comes out as identity. And that's going to be the singular pillar we stand on, and that's going to be the thing that's going to be the bell that we ring every day and say, this is me, this is me. Not because I think anything inside of there is wrong or even inherently bad. But I think we're putting too much, trying to squeeze out too little. And inevitably, when you have 40 ingredients, you're never going to have the same thing in your recipe. You follow me? So there's got to be able to be some sort of fundamental change. We've got to have a way that we can look differently. We've got to find a way that we can evaluate and identify who we are, starting with what our values are, so that we have a foundation that we can build on. So, hear me when I say this. There's a tinge that sometimes it follows the idea of values or core values. They have like a corporate sound to them, or people think that it's like what you do when you build a mission statement, or these are our 5 core pillars, and that seems like a really cheesy anecdote they've seen online. That's not the way that I want us to see them. I want you to be able to associate your values is equal to your why. Anytime somebody asks you the question, why do you do this? Why did you do this? Why do you want to do this? Why did you do that? Our answer should not go back to what we did. Our answer should go back to who we are. Why did you treat your wife that way? Because I value vulnerability and honesty and generosity, and there's no way that I know how to care for her except this way. Flip it. Why did you treat your wife this way? And that's when somebody can say, because you told me you valued this and it doesn't look like that's what you're doing. I was having a conversation right before we started, and I got asked, when it comes to sharing, and we're talking specifically about social media influencing and blogging, and sometimes it just feels like I don't want to share too much. Like I don't want to put too much. I want to put enough that people know me, but not so much. And my response was, I think it's because what happens is we put too much emphasis on what it is we're doing, and we don't do enough talking about why it is we're doing it. See, I don't think anybody here, if you identified what the why was, would have a problem saying it, sharing it, communicating it, or finding 5 different ways to define it and then communicate it via social media. I don't think anybody's why here is so personal you wouldn't share it. I think deep inside, the why is the singular thing you're looking to share, and the only way you know how to do it is by telling people what you do, because it's the most tangible. But I think we can hold back a little on the what, and we can push in a little on the why, and I think we have a little bit more clarity about who we are and what it is that we're doing. See, values-based living is not a cheesy anecdote to create some sort of emotional high out of you. I think values-based living is the reality that truth is going to win over lies. And when we live our identity based on what I like to call situational identity, what happens is that we allow the things that people want from us and the lies that we believe to be the thing that motivates us. Who I am right now is not fundamentally different than who I was when I was 22. I'm still bossy. I still want to sell you your own shoes. I still have this innate desire and need to want to be charismatic and want to be liked and want to be loved and get you to approve of me. I still feel the need to obviously want to be in front and communicate and tell people what my opinion is. That part hasn't fundamentally changed. What happened is I stopped squeezing everything to the funnel at the bottom where it came to identity. It wasn't about me and I wasn't at the center. It's an attempt every day to wake up and go, no, this is what I value and this is what I stand on. This is the foundation I want to be built on. And so everything I do is going to come from this platform. And so it doesn't put me in the middle, it puts you in the middle. It allows me to have something consistent that I'm going to bring to the table, not me standing on the table trying to adjust who's allowed to sit there. So here's what I want us to do. If we're going to start with identifying not roles, definitions, fears, insecurities, dreams, hopes, obstacles, to squeeze something else out, that means we have to have something else to stand on. So take your notes, open them up. So here's how I want us to begin to build our identity. You'll notice on the table, there's some longer individual pieces of paper that says why you do what you do. There should be some for everybody to look at. If you don't have one, this table has all the rest of them, so you can grab one from them. You guys in the back can grab one. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to look at this list, and I want you to pick the 5 words, the 5 values on this page, the 5 things that you value most as a human being. Not as an entrepreneur, not as a maker, not as an artist, not as a professional, not as an employee, not as a business owner, as a human being, as an individual. I want you to land on what are the 5 things on this page that you value most. So here's why I like to start with core values. I'll give you a little brief background so you know why this is not totally crazy. So I own a company now called Stafford Tree Co. So people say, what do you do? I help individuals rebuild their identity. So I work with individuals one-on-one, teams of 12 or less, or sole proprietor entrepreneurs. I take you on a 2-day retreat, me and you, one-on-one for 36 hours, figure out who you are, what you're doing, why you do it, how you should do it, who you should be targeting, what you should be charging, and then we do coaching for 6 months afterward. So for doing that for the last couple of years, what I found is I've developed this process called identity mapping, where we spend half a day together, we spend 4 hours. What you and I can cover 4 hours one-on-one with no technology being interrupted is what it would take us to cover 1 hour a week for 9 months straight. So in that process, part of what we do is we identify what our core values are. And the reason we do that is because for me, I identify core values are the why we do what we do. Core values are also synonymous with our intention. They're synonymous with our reason. They're the why we do something, the motivation we do something. See, the deal is if we don't identify this part first, we don't have the capacity to live a life that is actionary. We live a life that is 100% reactionary. Because if I don't know why I want to do it, then I'm just going to respond to whatever you did based on what you did and what I think you are going to like. Does that make sense? I take as a wedding photographer. If I wasn't willing to take action on who we were, what we did, what our brand was going to be, where we wanted to photograph, and who we wanted to photograph, then my response would be I would not be able to take action in my business. I would only be able to react. I would only be able to take the leads that I got and then decide, do I or do not want to do that? But if I had no reason to choose why I did or I didn't, my answer to everything would be yes. Why? Do you have money? Yes. Do you have checks? Great. Do they not bounce? Even better. Then yes, I'll shoot your wedding. I think a lot of us run businesses that way. What do you do? I do this. Great. I need someone that does that. Awesome. Do you have money? Yep. Do you have $500? Nope. How much? $200. I'm in. There's a time and a place for all of that. I'm not knocking it. But I am saying is that's living a life that's reactionary. If we take that same example and then we look at it and parallel it to a relationship, use marriage as an example. If I don't have a reason for why I'm going to choose to love my wife, I'm going to only decide if I want to love my wife based on what she does for me, and vice versa. That's called a volatile marriage. It's called take a look at marriage statistically. It's because we all like to live reactionary. We all like to do what we want to do based on what somebody else did. We don't have a foundation to say, I'm going to choose to do what I want to do and why I want to do it because I have a reason for doing it, not just hoping that I'm going to respond positively to somebody else. Does that make sense? So that's why we're starting with core values. So here's what I want you to do. You have your 5 values. Underneath your 5 values, I need for you to identify what is the one, what is the biggest, what is the most present, what is the most consistent fear or insecurity that you carry about yourself. I want you to write that underneath there. Yeah, so I want you to identify what is the one fear or insecurity that is the most present in your life, that you fight most frequently. I want you to write that underneath there. So I'm going to give you an example so that it'll help. For me, wanting you to like me, wanting you to tell me that I did a good job, and internally feeling like not enough people like me, not enough people care, and I'm not ever going to be good enough, single-handedly the greatest fear and insecurity that I wake up with every day. So I can look at that and look back at my life and go, well, my mom left 5 different times, and my dad never chose me, and I tried to be everybody's best friend, but I kept moving. I did everything right, and nobody seemed to care. I did everything wrong, and nobody seemed to care. Okay, so it makes sense, right? Like it's fitting. But I have to be aware of that, because if I'm not aware of it, it will rule every decision that I make. What is the singular thing for you that if you are not aware of, inevitably is going to rule every decision that you make? All right. So now what you should have is, you should have on the top of your paper, you have who you are, you have your 5 core values. Underneath your 5 core values, you have what your insecurity is, correct? Okay. Now, here's what I want you to do. Hopefully this works. In my mind, it was going to be a really good idea. So I want you to fold your paper back, and I want you to look at all the roles you play, and then in your mind where it says fears, lies, hopes, dreams, doubts, insecurities, I want you to just project what your hopes, fears, dreams, okay? You know what yours are in your mind. I want you to see those there. I want you to see all your roles there, all those words. And I want you to look at this picture, because this is the picture that we have been believing about what our identity is. We have been believing that if we take all these things and squeeze it out, somehow we're going to get something good, and every day we end up with something different. But the picture I want us to start believing is, now open your notes, is this. Is that if we believe that these 5 things, that these values are the basis for who we are, that every single day these 5 values will always trump whatever insecurity it is that we have, and that the insecurity will never win as long as we lead with these 5 values. My fear and desire that you don't like me, or you don't love me, or I'm not good enough, or nobody wanted to choose me, that will never win if I do my best every day to wake up and lead with vulnerability, with individuality, with honesty, with generosity, and with fearlessness. I will not let the fact that I believe at times I'm not good enough win if I trust and know that if I lead in this way, that I'm going to give you the truest representation of who I am. And therefore, every decision I make and every what that I do will be built on a foundation of who I want to be. Does that make sense? I think what happens, though, is we inevitably live this and we believe this. So I don't want to create more drama than what is necessary. But there are people here, and those people being us, that need to hit a hard reset. There needs to be a hard reset for why we're choosing to do what we're doing. Our intention. Some of us need to hit a hard reset on the fact that we need to live a life that is actionary. Some of us need to hit a hard reset on the fact that we've created a business that we don't really believe in, but we're too afraid to change it because we're afraid people aren't going to like what it is we actually want to sell. Some of us are in a position because we need to start the business we've always wanted to start. We're just too afraid that people around us are going to think that we're crazy. And some of us need to shut the business down that we have because you're not really selling what it is you want to be selling. But when we live this way, we can make excuses all day, every day for why it's okay. My wife, Sarah, who's here with me, we bought a house 5 years ago in Oak Cliff. that point, our dream house. I haven't really got emotional about talking about this yet. This is the first time for me, so my wife has done. First time in my life, and I said, I'm going to put down roots someplace. I mean, I've moved every 18 months for the first 28 years of my life. And we're going to put down roots, and we're going to stay here, and we're going to be involved here, and we're going to know our neighbors. We're going to redo our house with our own two hands, and we're going to rebuild it, and we're going to remake it, and we're going to change this room, and we're going to have our first kid here, and we're going to have chickens in our backyard, and we're going to invite people over, and we're going to have a table that seats 12, and our front door is always going to be open. We're looking at a home group from our church. We're going to make sure our neighbors know us, whether they're like us or not. And we had a really hard discussion about 2.5 months ago because we chose different careers. We were wedding photographers, and this is probably too much information that you're supposed to tell the average public, but I think it matters. You shoot 40 weddings a year at $5,000 a wedding. You can do the math on you can ask Siri to calculate it for you. We made lots of money. And making lots of money, we could afford to live in North Oak Cliff and buy a house and do things to it and live arbitrarily and travel the world and do what we wanted because it was just the two of us. And so fast forward 4.5 years, and we have a son who's 18 months old. We have a life that we want to live based on what it is that we value, not giving a shit about what anybody else thinks most of the time. And so we said the best thing to do for our family is to continue to build the businesses we have because we believe we're doing what it is we're supposed to be doing. But that means that things in our life have to change if we're going to stay true to what it is that we value. We value time with our family. We value freedom of schedule. We value going to our grandma's funeral on a Tuesday if we want to. We value hanging out with our friends. We value being available for dinner at 4 o'clock. I value my wife being able to be gone today and to take my son and go to have a picnic and go to the park at 11:30 because I want to. But that means I can't afford to live where I live because I'm attempting to build a business again from the ground up. Now it's a business I believe in, and it's something that I'm willing to sacrifice quite a bit for. But if we're going to live a life based on who it is we say we are, and we're going to live a life, then that means we have to change things. And so 36 hours ago, we sold our house. We have no idea where we're going. We have no home to buy. We have no lease at an apartment anyplace. We're just winging it. But we're winging it because the most important thing for our family is to be able to live a life based on who we are, not based a life on what somebody thinks I'm capable of doing. I don't care if you know that we live or don't live in North Oak Cliff. I don't care if it's Kessler Heights or Kessler Park. I don't care if it's half a mile from walking from everything or if I have to drive 20 minutes because we moved someplace on a bigger lot in an older house that we need to redo because it's where our family wants to be. See, if I live my life based on all the roles that I play in the insecurity and fear that I'm never selling, I'm never moving because I want you to think that I'm more successful than I am because I need you to like me and to love me and approve of me. Or I can say that those things don't matter and that who I am and who my family is and who we want to be is the most important thing. So you can leave and you can choose. You can leave and you can choose to let the fear and insecurity win. You can leave and choose to say that who you are is going to be the thing that trumps every decision that you make. But I can't control that for you. That's got to be something that you decide. You've got to decide the business you have, you're going to build on a foundation of something that every day you can wake up and say the same thing. You want social media content? Take vulnerability, fearlessness, honesty, generosity, and individuality. Define those in 5 different ways. Put up a picture and say something instead. Because no one gives a shit about what you ate or where you went or how pretty it was. Not because it doesn't matter, but because you're not talking about who you are, you're only talking about what you're doing. Nobody wants to buy what you're doing. You don't. Think about what you're wearing, where you are, what you have in your hand and in your possession right now. You either bought it because of what someone was going to think about you, or you bought it because you believed in the person you bought it from. So the only options. So as a maker and an artist and a creative, what space do we want to be in? What product do we want to be selling? What service do we want to be selling? As an individual, in relationships, how do we want to be operating? So I want you to look down at your paper where your 5 values and your insecurity is. Without being too hocus pocus here, I need you to look at that and stare at it for a second. I need you to let it sit, let it resonate. That insecurity that you see and that you fight a lot of the time is not going to win anymore. It's not going to be the thing that drives who you are. What it is that you value is going to be the thing that drives who you are. It's going to be the singular thing that we're going to say and communicate and build upon. Values-based living trumps fear. It beats doubt, and it gives us a foundation to stand on. It's not a cheesy anecdote for an emotional high. It's the reality that you're going to choose to live a life based on truth or based on lies. I think if we live a life based on knowing what we value, we can live a life based on truth. And in that space, fear and insecurity can't win. So, remember, if your values are not defined and owned, they affect no one. But if your values are defined and owned, then they're able to transcend and be a part of every decision that you make, and therefore they affect everyone and everything that you choose to do. It is our responsibility to choose how to live and communicate who we are. Whether that's as an individual, as a friend, in relationships, as a business owner, as an employee, as a maker, in all things. It's our job to make sure we're communicating that way. We've got to take action, not live a life that is reactive. Make sense? Okay. Any thoughts or questions about any of that? We'll do a formal Q&A here in a second, but I just want to make sure that's not. Okay, so here's your homework. I need you to identify the 2 to 3 people in your life that you are closest to, the 2 or 3 people in your life that you trust most. I need for you to communicate them that you went to this thing outside and it was a little cold. This guy got up with a really long shirt and told me write these 5 words down, and somehow I said I believe them. And tell these 2 or 3 people, this is the person that I want to be. This is who I want to be, and this is what I want to be communicating. Help keep me accountable to be this person. And all the decisions that I make, I want to make sure that I'm building a life that is foundational, not a life that is reactionary. That's your homework. 2 to 3 people, tell them your words. Tell them you want to be held accountable. Sound good? All right. Thank you.